Good morning. 9 years ago, almost to the day, I lived in Morgantown, West Virginia, and we were having an Easter egg hunt. There were thousands of eggs, but I only had my eyes set on one, the golden egg for boys ages 6 and 7, because when you got that, you were guaranteed an entire Easter basket of toys from the dollar store. Now, I know it doesn't sound that great, but I was so excited. The horn sounded and I took off. I passed all the eggs filled with candy, and I had one goal, and I attained it. I found the golden egg, and I was so excited that I almost forgot to get all the other eggs full of candy. Then it happened. Conflict struck. A lady came up yelling at our preacher, saying that it wasn't fair and that her son found the egg before I did. I couldn't believe my ears. It just wasn't true. The preacher, who just so happens to be my dad, told her to wait for a second, so he went over and asked me if I'd be willing to give up my Easter basket to appease their anger. I didn't want to give it up, and I didn't want to wait, but I did. Well, my dad on the way home bought me a toy boat and a dartboard, which was so much better than the Easter basket, but it was still hard to wait. I trusted my dad, and that afternoon, he gave me something so much better. But sadly, conflict like that grows to much higher levels and surrounds us everywhere. Geneva University put out a study late last year that said 110 different cross-cultural conflicts are happening in the world right now as we speak. That is such a sad and horrifying thing, but with conflict and fighting and chaos all around us, we look to a higher power to find sanctuary and to help us in our day-to-day troubles. Exodus 12:12 says, "On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt, for I am the Lord." Now, in the midst of chaos and conflict, the Lord was a righteous judge. He went before the Israelites, as he does go before us, and went head on into the conflict. Our enemies' trials and spiritual opposition pale in comparison to the might and power that God has to stop them. Joshua 24:14 says that the Israelites and their fathers believed in the false gods in Egypt over the river. So the spiritual opposition in Exodus comes in the form of Pharaoh and Egypt's false gods. And to stop this horrible wrong belief, God did what he always does. He went head on into the conflict by taking on each of the false gods individually. The plague of blood was against Hapi and Osiris, the Egyptian gods of the Nile. The plague of frogs was against Heket, the Egyptian god of frogs and fertility. The disease of the beasts and the death of cattle was against Apis, the god of livestock. And the plague of darkness was against Ra, the god of the sun and the afterlife. Righteous judgment is just one of the many ways that God helps us overcome our trials and eventually leads us to sanctuary. As people, it's hard to let go and let God take the wheel. Our innate want for power is a hard thing to overcome, but when we give up that power to God and allow him to pass righteous judgment, we will find peace and sanctuary. Exodus 14:14 reads, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still." The Lord will go before us and take on our battles. It's hard to give up our power, but once we do, the Lord will fight them instead. In times of trouble, when we face our struggles and our opposition, it will come to pass, where the Lord helps us in our time of need. Exodus 25:8 says, "Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them." Letting go of the burdens and conflict builds a sanctuary for God and puts him in the high place where he is supposed to take over our conflicts and struggles. The gospel calls us to present ourselves and our struggles to God, not bottle it up and try to take care of it ourselves. When we do that and we only be still, we find peace and sanctuary. So in conclusion, when we look to the focus of this weekend and the overarching message of Exodus, we need to remember 3 things. 1, be still. 2, while still, let God pass righteous judgment. And 3, allow him to take control and fight our battles for us. Sadly, sometimes we will lose an Easter basket, but the peace and judgment that God will bring righteously later is so much better, even more than a dartboard and a toy boat.